Prophecy is not prediction. It is memory, remembered from a time yet to come. There are moments in history when the veil between worlds thins, when symbols, visions, and dreams become gateways to truths our logic cannot comprehend. In ancient temples, with encoded scrolls, and whispered through the mouths of oracles, a strange force pulses just beneath reality. A force we've come to call prophecy. But what if we've misunderstood its nature entirely? This video is not about crystal balls or end-of-world countdowns. It is about the hidden architecture of time, and how certain individuals throughout history developed the ability to read it like a living language. To them, the future wasn't a linear path. It was a spiraling echo, encoded in patterns, archetypes, and cosmic rhythms. They weren't predicting, they were decoding. The Mayans, the Essenes, the Hermetic seers of Alexandria, and even forgotten cave dwellers from pre-literate societies all seemed to tap into something beyond the present moment. Their messages weren't warnings. They were instructions, clues buried in the structure of time, left for future generations who would awaken just in time to remember. So what does it take to understand a prophecy? It begins with you. Your perception. Your frequency. Your willingness to see beyond cause and effect into the realm of symbol and synchronicity. In this documentary, we begin the first steps toward decoding ancient prophecies. We'll travel through sacred texts, esoteric philosophies, and mystical traditions that reveal a profound truth. Time is not what we think it is. Prepare to shift the lens through which you see history, reality, and yourself. Because once you learn how to read the signs, you'll realize they've been speaking to you all along. Throughout ancient civilizations, prophecy was never seen as a cheap parlor trick or a superstition for the fearful. It was a sacred science, an act of divine communion. In the oldest records we possess, from the Sumerian clay tablets to the cryptic inscriptions on Egyptian temple walls, we find recurring evidence of individuals regarded not as fortune tellers, but as time walkers, gifted with the ability to translate the hidden language of the cosmos. To the Babylonians, the movement of stars wasn't just astronomy. It was divine storytelling. Each planetary conjunction, eclipse, and solstice was believed to echo a pattern from the divine mind. The stars were not distant, burning gas. They were celestial hieroglyphs, guiding the rhythm of fate. In the Chaldean oracles, prophecy emerged through harmonics, fire rituals, and dream states, forming a mystical framework of cosmic causality. The ancient Egyptians held the concept of Zep Tepi, or the first time, a mythical golden age where the gods walked among humanity and seeded knowledge. Their prophecies weren't about the end of time, but the return of divine order, the resetting of cosmic balance. The Book of the Dead wasn't just a funerary text. It was a roadmap for navigating time beyond linear existence, offering clues for initiates to awaken their dormant faculties. In India, the rishis, seer poets of the Vedic era, composed the Rig Veda not from imagination, but from inner vision. They claimed to hear the hymns of the universe. These weren't inventions. They were transmissions received from the Akashic field, the metaphysical library where all timelines are stored. Time, to the rishis, was not a ticking clock. It was a layered tapestry of cause, intention, and karmic consequence. And in the Judeo-Christian tradition, true prophecy was never meant to be predictive doomsaying. The Hebrew word for prophet, navi, meant one who speaks for. These mystics, like Isaiah or Ezekiel, were chosen not to predict events, but to interpret divine will, to bring awareness to unseen patterns, moral cycles, and the fall of empires driven by spiritual decay. They served as warning bells, not crystal gazers. Yet, as civilizations fell and dogma replaced wisdom, prophecy lost its sacred thread. It was stripped of its symbolic language and replaced with literalism. The deep, poetic metaphors of ancient texts were reinterpreted as rigid timelines and doomsday clocks. What was once an art of interpretation became a tool of control. Prophets turned into madmen or manipulated messengers. But beneath that distortion, the core truth remains intact. Prophecy was always about decoding the archetypal patterns governing humanity, the collective stories that repeat across cultures and eras, like echoes in a chamber. The names may change. The empires may rise and fall. But the blueprint, the divine code, remains. And the mystics knew that those who learned to read this code would not be enslaved by the illusion of chaos. They would walk as visionaries, not victims, remembering that every age contains its own encoded guidance, waiting for those who are ready to see. The language of symbols and the mirror of time. Prophecy begins where literal language ends. It does not speak in plain terms. It whispers in symbols, echoes in archetypes, and hides in the folds of stories that seem too strange to be coincidence. To decode a prophecy, one must first learn the alphabet of the soul. Symbols are the primordial language of the unconscious mind. Carl Jung called them containers of meaning, images that hold vast truths within a single form. A serpent is not just a snake. In prophetic language, it could be healing, deception, rebirth, or divine knowledge, depending on the context and the vibration of the time. In almost every culture, you'll find recurring archetypes. The flood, the savior, the betrayer, the sacred child, the great war, the golden age. Why do these motifs repeat across time and continents? Because prophecy doesn't point to events. It reveals patterns. The mystics understood that history is not linear. It is a spiral, returning to itself again and again, but on higher or lower frequencies. When a prophet sees the future, what they're actually perceiving is the recurrence of archetypal energies that have played out before. These energies manifest differently each time. New faces, new nations, new technologies. But the essence remains identical. This is why the Book of Revelation, the Popol Vuh of the Maya, and the Sibylline prophecies of ancient Rome all seem to predict events in our modern world. They weren't predicting our time, they were decoding the eternal themes of human evolution. Corruption, collapse, awakening, redemption. But how did they receive these messages? Three main conduits emerge throughout history: dream states and trance visions. The Oracle of Delphi inhaled sacred vapors before speaking her riddles. Indigenous shamans fasted and consumed plant medicine to induce visionary states. The ancient prophets often described dreams so vivid they felt more real than waking life. These were not hallucinations. They were symbolic downloads, filtered through the subconscious, where time is fluid. Sacred geometry and numerical codes. Pythagoras believed that number was the language of the divine. Ancient texts like the Bible and the Torah are riddled with numerical patterns and encryptions. Gematria, the tree of life, the Fibonacci sequence. To the initiated, these numbers were not just quantities but frequencies, vibrations that pointed to deeper truths. Celestial movement and cosmic rhythm. Ancient prophets were also astronomers. The stars to them were not just decorations in the sky, they were chronometers of fate. Eclipses, alignments, planetary retrogrades, each carried symbolic messages. The Mayan calendar was not about dates, it was about waves of consciousness that rise and fall like cosmic tides. But decoding prophecy isn't as simple as reading a chart or a verse. The deeper work happens within. The great paradox of prophecy is this: it reveals nothing to those who are not ready. Like a seed, the message lies dormant until it encounters fertile ground, the consciousness of a seeker whose perception has been purified through experience, reflection, and inner alignment. That's why some can read the same prophecy and feel nothing, while others are struck by it like lightning. Prophecy doesn't speak to the world. It speaks to the soul. And so, the first step in decoding ancient prophecies is not to look outward for signs, but inward, for alignment, resonance, and the courage to interpret metaphor with clarity. The mystics knew this. You must become the key before you unlock the door. Beyond time. Fractals, fates, and the prophetic mirror. What if prophecy is not about what will happen, but what must happen if the pattern is not changed? The ancients understood something we've forgotten in our obsession with linear progress. Time is a mirror, not a road. It reflects consciousness back to itself. And prophecy is not a window into destiny. It's a map of momentum, showing us the direction of our current spiritual trajectory. The Greeks had two words for time: chronos, the ticking clock, and kairos, the opportune moment, the sacred window where transformation becomes possible. Prophecy, when rightly understood, is not about dates. It's about kairos. It tells us when the energies converge for healing, awakening, or collapse, and leaves the choice in our hands. The fractal nature of prophecy. In many esoteric systems, time is not a line but a fractal, a recursive, self-replicating pattern that unfolds in nested layers. The ancient Hindus called these cycles yugas. ages of rising and falling consciousness. The Hopi spoke of worlds that were born and destroyed in repeating intervals. Kabbalists described Sphirot, 10 emanations through which divine light flows, creating a spiral of mirrored realities. These weren't myths. They were spiritual physics. If prophecy is fractal, then what seems like the future is actually a higher iteration of a familiar pattern. The names change, the technology evolves, but the spiritual lessons remain. And here lies the paradox. Prophecy is not fate. It is conditional. A warning. A whisper. A mirror held up to the soul of civilization, asking, will you evolve, or will you repeat? Hidden models of time and consciousness. In Hermetic teachings, reality is structured by correspondence. As above, so below. Events are reflections of internal archetypal forces. This means prophecy cannot be separated from psychology. The fall of a kingdom reflects the fall of integrity. The rise of a savior reflects the awakening of the higher self. Every so-called event is a symbol made manifest. Consider the Mayan long count calendar. Mainstream interpretations turned it into an apocalyptic doomsday clock, focusing on 2012 as the end of the world. But to Mayan priests, it was never about destruction. It was about a threshold, a great turning, the end of one cycle and the potential awakening into another. But thresholds come with danger. Liminality breeds both demons and divinity. It is in these moments, these kairos windows, that false prophets rise. They don't speak in riddles. They speak in certainties. Their prophecy flatters the ego and sells security. But true prophecy, it challenges. It demands inner work. It requires the seeker to feel the weight of their own unconscious participation in the world's illusions. Prophetic blindness and collective denial. One of the greatest dangers surrounding prophecy is literalism. The belief that metaphysical truths can be reduced to dates, coordinates, or political events. This misunderstanding has been the downfall of countless spiritual movements. Ancient prophecies were never meant to be solved like riddles on a test. They were interactive. They unfold as we awaken. This is why some of the most powerful messages were encoded in poetry, myth, and sacred geometry. Languages that bypass the rational mind and speak directly to the soul. They aren't meant to be solved. They are meant to awaken something forgotten. And here's the final secret. The deeper your self-awareness, the more clearly you see the collective prophecy playing out. As above, so below. As within, so without. The true decoder of prophecy is not the scholar. Not the historian. Not the guru. It is the one who dares to look inward with such radical honesty that the mirror no longer reflects fear, but clarity. Becoming the decoder. Techniques to read the language of destiny. It's one thing to understand prophecy intellectually. It's another to live it. Prophecies don't unfold because we read them. They unfold because we embody their message, or ignore it. The ancient mystics taught that to interpret prophecy correctly, you must first undergo a subtle transformation. You must become attuned, sensitive to meaning hidden in the mundane, to synchronicity disguised as coincidence, and to symbols that whisper beneath the noise of everyday life. Here are the first practical steps for beginning that transformation. 1. Build a symbolic journal. Start keeping a personal book of signs. Each time a recurring symbol appears, whether in dreams, nature, media, or conversations, write it down. Then reflect on your emotional reaction to it. Ancient seers didn't consult outside dictionaries of meaning. They developed their own inner lexicon, cultivated through meditation and contemplation. Did the crow you saw 3 times this week signal death? Or truth? Or a turning point? Did the number 7 appear on your receipt, a license plate, and a clock? Why now? Meaning is not static. It is relational, alive, and speaking to you. 2. Observe kairos moments. Begin tracking moments of inner electricity. Times when reality seems unusually charged, or you feel an inexplicable sense of significance. These are kairos windows, thresholds where transformation is possible. Each full moon, equinox, solstice, or major eclipse is a traditional kairos window. During these periods, sit in silence. Light a candle. Ask, What am I being shown right now that I'm resisting seeing? These moments are invites, not commands. But your attention activates them. 3. Decode dreams as personal prophecy. The ancients believed dreams were messages from the higher self or the divine realm. Pure prophecy streaming into your psyche each night. And before sleep, set a clear intention: show me what I need to see. Upon waking, record your dreams immediately. Pay attention to repeating people, places, or symbols. Use free association. What does the dream element remind you of emotionally, spiritually, or historically? This practice doesn't just help you interpret prophecy, it tunes you to the frequencies where prophecy is revealed. 4. Practice sacred time awareness. In our modern world, time is fragmented, rushed, and mechanical. But to understand prophecy, you must return to cyclical sacred time. Try this exercise. For 1 week, live according to lunar rhythms. Track the moon's phase each night and journal how your energy shifts. Structure your day with ritual, even simple ones. Light incense at sunrise, meditate at dusk, fast once per week. This reestablishes inner harmony with cosmic order. When you live symbolically, reality responds symbolically. 5. Guard your inputs, strengthen your signal. Prophecy cannot reach a mind saturated with noise. Begin reducing mental clutter. Doom scrolling, junk information, fear-based media. These are the signal jammers of your inner antenna. Instead, read sacred texts, not to believe them literally, but to feel the cadence of spiritual language. The Tao Te Ching, the Gnostic Gospels, the Kybalion, even poetry from Rumi or Tagore. These will rewire your perception to receive meaning on multiple levels. And remember, it's not about how much you read. It's about how deeply you listen. The truth is, you are already receiving messages. The shift begins when you stop waiting for lightning to strike and begin cultivating the silence needed to hear the thunder from afar. Prophecy is not a gift bestowed upon the chosen. It is a muscle, a spiritual faculty waiting to be remembered. The prophecy is you. What if the ancient prophecies weren't written to predict a distant future, but to awaken you here and now? All the sacred texts, encoded visions, and celestial signs, the floods, the phoenix, the final trumpet, are not external forecasts. They are internal thresholds, mirrors of your own evolution. They do not tell you what will happen, they reflect what is already happening in your soul, in your society, and in the collective dream we call reality. You are not separate from the prophecy. You are the prophecy, its living expression, unfolding moment by moment. When you learn to decode symbols, observe sacred time, and align with the rhythm of your inner world, something begins to shift. The noise quiets. The patterns reveal themselves. And what once felt like chaos begins to hum with a deeper ancient harmony. The world doesn't need more prophets shouting about the end. It needs initiates, those brave enough to remember. You don't need to see the future to change it. You only need to see clearly, to read the signs, follow the thread, and become a mirror that reflects truth instead of illusion. So the question is no longer, what is going to happen? It is, what message have I been carrying all along, waiting to remember? Because perhaps the greatest prophecy is the one you fulfill simply by awakening. If this video stirred something ancient within you, don't let it fade into the noise. Subscribe to Esoteric Glyph and journey deeper into the arcane, the symbolic, and the forgotten truths of our reality. Comment below, what patterns have you begun to notice in your own life? And remember, the more you seek within, the more the universe begins to speak. Thank you.